Have you ever wondered why your home still feels dusty, stuffy, or uncomfortable, even after you clean it regularly? What if the real problem isn't your cleaning routine at all, but the air circulating through your HVAC system every single day?
Well, it's a phenomenal paradox in modern home ownership, really.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, people spend hours scrubbing surfaces, mopping floors, and yet the indoor environment still feels fundamentally compromised.
Exactly. And that is the core of our mission today. In this deep dive, we are exploring why HVAC cleaning in Atlanta, GA, makes a noticeable difference in your home.
It's a huge difference.
It really is. We are going to break down the mechanics of how, hidden duct buildup affects everything from your daily indoor air quality and baseline comfort to system efficiency and, well, ultimately your family's health.
And to do that effectively, we have to treat the home as a dynamic, interconnected system.
Right. It's not just a box you live in.
Exactly. You cannot isolate the air from the machinery that moves it, nor can you ignore the specific geography the home sits in.
Which is why we are genuinely thrilled to be sponsored by a team that engineers solutions specifically for this geographic environment, Four Seasons Air Care LLC.
Local experts are crucial for this.
Absolutely. You can reach them at 404-891-0225. And we aren't just talking about like a basic vacuuming service here.
Oh, no.
They offer a really comprehensive suite of environmental interventions. That includes air duct cleaning GA, crawl space encapsulation, ductwork installation and repair, dryer vent cleaning, disinfection services, HVAC system cleaning, and water damage restoration.
That's quite the list.
It is. And again, that direct line is 404-891-0225.
Looking at that list of services, it really reflects a foundational understanding of building science.
How so?
Well, you have to address the entire airflow pathway. You can't just clean one part and expect it to fix the whole house.
Because honestly, the frustration of dusting a room, putting away the cleaning supplies, and then literally the very next day seeing a fresh layer of dust motes floating in a sunbeam, it's maddening.
It really is the worst.
I like to think of it as spending your weekend trying to clean the outside of a car, right? Meticulously waxing the paint, while the inside of the dashboard vents are just packed with wet mud.
That's a great visual.
Yeah, the second you turn the AC on, the interior is ruined again.
And that analogy actually touches on the underlying physics of airflow over a rough surface.
Okay, getting into the physics now.
Just a bit. But basically, the dirtier the inside of the ductwork gets, the more friction it creates, which actually causes even more particulate to settle and bind to the walls.
Like a snowball effect.
Exactly. If we step back and look at the whole house, you really have to view the HVAC system as the respiratory tract of the building.
Like a lungs.
It operates exactly like the lungs. Over years of operation, those lungs constantly inhale airborne debris.
Right.
The return ducts, the evaporator coils, the blower compartments, the drain pans, they silently accumulate layers of everyday dust, pet dander, dead skin cells, post-renovation debris from sanding drywall, and microscopic pollen spores.
So it isn't just a static tube, it's an active collection point.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And the Environmental Protection Agency has actually published a very stark warning regarding this specific buildup.
What do they say?
They emphasize that a forced air system operates as a closed loop with multiple interconnected, interdependent components.
Okay.
So if a service provider cleans the vents but leaves just one contaminated component of that system, dirty, say, the blower motor assembly, the entire system can be recontaminated almost immediately once the air handler kicks back on.
Okay, let's unpack this, because my immediate thought, and likely what you listening at home are wondering right now, is, wait, I buy those expensive pleated air filters at the hardware store.
Everyone does.
Right, I change them out every 3 months. Shouldn't those filters act as a force field and catch all this stuff before it becomes a deep-seated mechanical problem?
It is a logical assumption, but, well, it ignores the realities of fluid dynamics. Yeah, filters are critical, but they are not impenetrable barriers. First, as a filter does its job and loads up with debris, its resistance to airflow increases.
Because it's getting clogged.
Exactly. Air is a fluid, and physics dictates that fluid will always take the path of least resistance.
Ah, I see where this is going.
So when the filter becomes slightly restricted, the immense suction power of the blower motor will start pulling air through any tiny gaps around the cardboard frame of the filter.
Oh, wow.
We call this bypass air.
So the system is essentially breathing around the filter.
Yes, bypassing it entirely in some spots. Furthermore, standard filters simply are not rated to catch everything.
Like the really microscopic stuff?
Right. Extremely fine particulate matter things measuring under 1 micron, like certain pulverized pollen fragments or microscopic pet dander, can easily pass through lower-grade filters.
That just goes right through the paper.
It does. And once those microscopic particles get past that initial filter line, they travel deep into the dark interior of the system and settle onto the mechanical components.
And here is where the narrative shifts from a general housing issue to a localized crisis.
Yes, it definitely does.
Because we aren't just talking about a generic layer of dust. The sources explicitly point out that for those of you listening in Atlanta, Georgia, this specific climate actually weaponizes this whole process.
Oh, absolutely. The intersection of thermodynamics and the local climate data it's fascinating, really.
It's uniquely challenging.
Atlanta presents a triad of environmental challenges. First, consider the duration of the cooling season.
It's practically endless.
It essentially runs from May through October. The HVAC system is acting like a marathon runner, cycling millions of cubic feet of air continuously for half the year.
So the sheer volume of air processing is just way higher, but there's also the moisture variable, right?
Which brings us to the evaporator coil. Let's break down how cooling actually works, just briefly.
Okay, let's hear it.
An air conditioner doesn't actually make cold air. It removes heat and humidity from the existing indoor air.
Right.
It does this by passing warm air over a series of metal coils filled with freezing refrigerant. Because the humidity in Georgia frequently sits above 70%, when that warm, wet air hits the freezing coil, the temperature drops rapidly below the dew point.
Meaning the water vapor in the air basically turns into liquid water.
Exactly. The coil acts like a glass of ice water sitting on a patio in July.
Sweating like crazy.
Sweating profusely. So you have a dark, enclosed metal cabinet that is constantly dripping with condensation.
Sounds like a recipe for disaster.
It gets worse. Finally, you introduce the third element of the triad, the legendary Georgia pollen season, peaking aggressively in early to mid-April.
Oh, yes. The yellow haze that just coats the driveways and windshields?
Yes. So consider the chemistry happening inside your unit. You have high humidity creating constant condensation, mixing with fine bycast dust and heavy pollen spores inside a dark cabinet.
Oh, man.
This mixture creates something the industry refers to as the sludge effect.
The sludge effect.
Yeah. It ceases to be dry dust that you could simply wipe away. The moisture acts as a binder, turning the fine particulate and organic pollen into a sticky, paste-like residue.
A literal sludge.
A literal sludge. This accumulates heavily around the wet fins of the evaporator coils and inside the primary drain pan.
And that's not just dirt anymore.
No, because pollen and dead skin cells are organic material, that sludge becomes an incredibly nutrient-rich breeding ground for microbial growth.
Gross.
Very. Common indoor molds like Cladosporium thrive here, and that biological activity is the direct source of those persistent, musty, dirty sock odors that flood the home when the AC first cycles on.
It is literally baking a biological cake inside the machinery.
That's a disgustingly accurate way to put it.
But the research outlines another building science phenomenon that makes this situation even more complex. We need to talk about the stack effect.
Oh, the stack effect is crucial.
How does this principle manipulate the air we breathe?
Well, the stack effect forces us to reevaluate how air moves through a physical structure. It is rooted in thermal buoyancy.
Meaning?
Warm air is less dense than cold air, so naturally it rises.
Right.
In a typical multi-story home, that heated air constantly seeks escape routes through the upper boundaries of the building structure.
So it's pushing its way out.
Exactly. Leaking into the attic, slipping around recessed lighting fixtures, or finding gaps in the upper window framing.
Basically, the house acts like a leaking hot air balloon.
That is a brilliant way to visualize it. But physics demands equilibrium.
Okay.
When that air escapes out the top of the house, it creates a zone of negative pressure, a vacuum in the lower levels of the house.
And nature abhors a vacuum.
You know it. The house is forced to replace the volume of air it just lost. And where is the path of least resistance for replacement air?
Where?
In many southeastern homes, it is drawn straight up from the unsealed crawl space.
Wait, so my home is effectively acting like a giant straw driven into the earth.
That is precisely what is happening. The negative pressure pulls cold, damp, and often mold-laden air up from the soil,
Unbelievable.
seeping through the tiny gaps in the floorboards and baseboards, pulling it directly into the living areas. And where does that air go next?
Right into the return vents of your HVAC system.
Your air conditioner isn't merely processing the relatively clean air from your living room. It is actively inhaling the damp, contaminated atmosphere from the dark earth beneath your house, cooling it and blowing it over your bed.
It completely reframes how you look at the physical boundaries of a home. I mean, the floor is not a seal.
Not at all.
And when you synthesize all this, knowing that Atlanta's climate is actively fighting your indoor air quality with intense humidity, the resulting sludge effect, and this persistent stack effect pulling up crawl space air, the sheer complexity of the problem becomes undeniable.
It really does.
You cannot fix this with a household vacuum. You need an engineered, scientific intervention.
Which is why localized expertise is not a luxury in this scenario. It is a mechanical requirement.
This is exactly why a company like Four Seasons Air Care LLC, our sponsor for this deep dive, is the team you need to call at 404-891-0225.
They really understand this stuff.
Because they approach this from a building science perspective, they do not use subcontractors. Every technician they send is an actual company employee who is expert trained in these specific phenomena and fully background checked.
When dealing with complex airflow dynamics, you really need accountability.
You see that accountability reflected in their performance data, too. The methodology they use translates directly into measurable customer satisfaction.
Well, completely.
It really does. Looking at their Google Verified Trust Index reviews functions as a series of real-world case studies.
What do the reviews say?
Well, I'm looking at one from Jamie Bernstein, who left a 5-star review specifically pointing out the logistical efficiency, noting how Jonathan worked them into the schedule and the team deployed the very next day.
That's fast.
Crucially, Jamie noted they took immense care cleaning vents that hadn't been touched in a long time.
That phrase, immense care, indicates a procedural approach. Proper remediation of the sludge effect cannot be rushed.
Exactly. We see similar data from Nick Pattison, who highlighted how incredibly quick Jonathan was to respond and get a dryer vent cleaning scheduled.
Also very important for fire safety.
Oh, absolutely. And Tammy Jimenez verified their operational reliability, noting they were perfectly on time and entirely professional.
That's always a relief.
And Teresa Ford documented their interpersonal skills, mentioning the technicians were highly personable and patient while methodically tackling her very dirty ducts.
It is the necessary combination of advanced technical skill and basic human decency.
It establishes the trust required when you are authorizing technicians to dismantle and decontaminate the respiratory system of your home.
Right. It's invasive work if done properly.
If you want to experience that level of verified service, call Four Seasons Air Care at 404-891-0225. They back their methodology with a 100% money-back guarantee, and they offer 10% off your first-time service.
That's a great offer.
But let's transition back to the actual science of the cleaning. Knowing what we know about the sticky sludge on the coils and the constant influx of crawl space air, how do professionals actually extract this material without destroying the flexible ductwork?
So we have to look at the industry standards set by NADCA, that's the National Air Duct Cleaners Association.
Okay.
Their primary standard revolves around a mechanical principle called source removal.
Meaning we are entirely bypassing chemical cover-ups or like scented sprays. We are physically extracting the mass.
Correct. No perfumes, just physical removal. The foundational tool for source removal is an industrial-grade negative air machine.
What is that exactly?
The technicians connect these massive, high-powered vacuums to the main trunk lines of your ductwork, effectively placing the entire HVAC system under continuous, localized negative pressure.
Hang on, let me challenge that for a second.
Go for it.
If the stack effect taught us that creating a vacuum in the house pulls up dirty crawl space air, aren't the technicians just supercharging that process? Right. If they hook up a massive vacuum to my ducts, aren't they just going to suck even more dirt up through the floorboards while they clean?
That is a brilliant observation, and it actually highlights the exact difference between an amateur and a NADCA-trained professional.
Okay, lay it on me.
Before the negative air machine is ever turned on, the technicians systematically isolate the system.
Isolate how?
They seal off the supply and return registers throughout the house, effectively creating a closed, airtight loop within the ductwork itself.
Ah, I see.
So the vacuum is only pulling air from within the isolated ducts, not drawing from the ambient room pressure or the crawl space.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. But if the sludge is physically bonded to the metal coils and the duct walls, simply pulling air past it isn't going to peel it off, right?
No, it's not. That is where the agitation tools are deployed.
Agitation tools?
Yes. While the entire closed loop is under extreme suction, technicians introduce specialized pneumatic devices into the ductwork. One primary tool is the pneumatic air whip. These are flexible silicone tentacles driven by high-pressure compressed air.
That sounds intense.
They thrash around violently but safely, beating the caked-on dust and sludge loose from the duct walls without puncturing the material.
It essentially vibrates the contaminants off the surface.
Yes. They also utilize skipper balls.
Skipper balls.
Yeah, they're aerodynamic nozzles that shoot compressed air backward. As the nozzle is pushed down the duct, it acts like a tiny jet engine, blasting the loosened debris backward into the waiting pull of the negative air vacuum.
Oh, that's smart.
And finally, for the absolute toughest buildup, they use high-speed rotary brushes engineered with flexible shafts that can navigate sharp 90-degree bends, gently scrubbing the interior surfaces.
That is a staggering contrast to the cheap, generic coupon companies that show up, stick a standard shop vac into a vent cover for 5 minutes, and, present an invoice.
It's night and day.
That approach is the equivalent of sweeping dirt under a rug and claiming you mopped the floor.
In the industry, those are referred to as blow-and-go operations, and they can be actively detrimental.
How so?
Well, if an untrained technician uses a brush to agitate the sludge, but lacks the industrial negative air pressure to actually extract it, they simply aerosolize the debris.
Oh, no.
They leave a suspended cloud of loose mold spores, pollen, and dust inside your ducts. The next time your thermostat clicks on, that toxic cloud is blown directly into your living space.
Which raises a critical safety question about the professional method.
Definitely.
If Four Seasons Air Care is loosening all this deep-seated biologically active sludge, how do they guarantee it doesn't escape their equipment and contaminate the living room during the extraction?
The fail-safe is the filtration technology built into their extraction machines. Professional negative air machines utilize HEPA filtration.
Right.
HEPA stands for high-efficiency particulate air. To meet this classification, the filter must be certified to capture 99.97% of all particles, down to 0.3 microns in diameter.
Let's give that number some scale. A human hair is roughly 70 microns thick. A red blood cell is about 7 microns. So at 0.3 microns, we are talking about capturing particulate that is smaller than a single bacterium.
Exactly. It operates on a microscopic level. It ensures that the invisible mold spores, the pulverized pollen fragments, and the microscopic pet dander are securely trapped inside the machine's containment system.
So it's completely sealed.
The contaminants are removed from your home environment safely, permanently, and without secondary exposure.
So we understand the climate threat, we understand the physics of the stack effect, and we know the mechanics of the extraction. What is the tangible, real-world payoff for the listener once this process is complete?
The benefits divide into immediate sensory improvements and long-term financial and health returns.
Let's start with the immediate.
The most immediate sensory payoff is the olfactory change. The air simply smells fresher.
Like that musty smell is just gone.
Yes, that lingering, stale, subtle mustiness that you could never quite eliminate with candles or sprays is eradicated because the biological source, the sludge, is gone.
I would imagine the weekend cleaning routine changes dramatically as well.
Considerably. Because the system is no longer continuously recirculating particulate matter, the amount of dust settling on coffee tables and bookshelves plummets.
Wow.
But the most physical change is the restoration of airflow. When the blower motor and the evaporator coils are no longer choked by a layer of debris, the air encounters far less friction.
Makes sense.
Those sluggish vents at the far end of the house suddenly deliver strong, consistent pressure, eliminating those frustrating hot and cold zones.
Which naturally leads into the health benefits.
The clinical implications are significant. By physically removing the recirculating allergens, you drastically reduce the triggers for respiratory distress.
Right.
The EPA extensively studies a phenomenon known as sick building syndrome.
What's that?
This occurs when occupants experience acute health effects, like chronic headaches, unexplained fatigue, or persistent throat irritation that are linked directly to time spent inside a specific building.
And then they leave the building and feel fine.
Exactly. These symptoms often mysteriously vanish when the person leaves the house. Contaminated HVAC systems are one of the primary vectors for sick building syndrome.
Wow.
Professional source removal creates a definitively healthier, medically friendlier living space.
That is life-changing for anyone dealing with asthma or severe seasonal allergies, especially during the brutal Atlanta spring.
Without a doubt.
But beyond the health of the occupants, let's examine the health of the machinery. How does this impact energy consumption and the homeowner's wallet?
The financial return on investment is where the engineering data really shines. Both the Department of Energy and the Energy Star program have published compelling studies on HVAC efficiency.
What do they say?
Their data demonstrates that restricted or dirty duct systems can slash cooling efficiency by up to 20%.
Wait, 20%?
Up to 20%, yes.
Losing 20% efficiency means you are paying for every fifth day of air conditioning, essentially for free, getting zero cooling benefit. Why does the efficiency drop so dramatically?
It comes down to a metric called static pressure.
Static pressure.
Think of static pressure as resistance to airflow within a closed system.
Like trying to breathe deeply while running a marathon with your hand clamped firmly over your mouth.
That is a perfect physiological comparison. The blower motor is designed to push a specific volume of air per minute. When the coils are caked in sludge and the ducts are lined with friction-causing dust, the static pressure skyrockets.
So the motor is straining?
The motor has to work twice as hard, drawing significantly more electricity just to force the air through the blockages.
Ugh.
Furthermore, because less cold air is actually making it into the rooms, the thermostat stays triggered longer.
Right, because the room isn't cooling down.
The system runs extended cycles, consuming massive amounts of excess utility power. Professional source removal eliminates that static pressure. The system returns to its original design specifications, cooling the home faster and consuming far less electricity.
So treating this purely as an air quality upgrade is missing half the picture.
Entirely.
It is a mechanical insurance policy. By relieving that static pressure, you stop the blower motor from overheating and burning out prematurely.
Exactly.
You are effectively extending the lifespan of the entire HVAC unit and dodging a catastrophic multi-thousand-dollar repair bill down the line.
That is the ultimate synthesis. You are simultaneously optimizing your respiratory health, your daily physical comfort, and the mechanical longevity of the single most expensive appliance built into your home.
Let's bring all these threads together. Modern homes are being constructed and retrofitted to be increasingly airtight in the pursuit of energy efficiency.
Which is great for the energy bills.
Right. While that keeps the cold air inside, it ironically means that this respiratory system is trapping more contaminants indoors than ever before in human history.
It's a real trade-off.
When you combine that reality with the unique environmental load of the South, the extreme humidity, the intense pollen counts, and the insidious physics of the stack effect pulling moldy air up from the crawl space, the conclusion is inescapable.
That really is.
HVAC cleaning in Atlanta, Georgia creates a highly noticeable, measurable difference in your home comfort, your health, and your energy efficiency.
The building science is absolute. The environment places a heavy, continuous burden on these mechanical systems, and methodical professional source removal is the only scientifically valid way to reset that burden.
So stop letting your house breathe in sludge and crawl space air. Call the sponsor now, HVAC Cleaning in Atlanta, GA. That's Four Seasons Air Care at 404-891-0225.
Highly recommend them.
Demand the real deal. Negative air, HEPA-filtered clean from local experts who understand the science. Again, that number is 404-891-0225.
It is a fundamental intervention in your home's ecosystem that you will physically feel with every breath you take.
Think about the biggest appliance in your home. It's the one you interact with the most, but see the inside of the least. The next time you hear your AC kick on, ask yourself, what exactly is it exhaling into your room right now?